Hello, everyone. Welcome to From Coder to Leader with Fairygodboss and Indeed Prime. It's just noon, so we'll give everyone a few seconds to log on. Looks like there's lots of you logging in. If you don't mind, if you could just type in the chat that you can hear me, just to make sure we're all good, that would be much appreciated. Perfect. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Great. Well, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Mary, and I am with Fairygodboss. For those of you who don't know, Fairygodboss is the largest career community for women. We provide a variety of free resources like anonymous job reviews, job listings, and virtual events, including one next week for technologists specifically, and hopefully you can take the lessons you're learning in this presentation today and maybe use them next week at this virtual event to connect with employers like Accenture, HPE, and Verizon, who are looking to hire technology team leaders. So this is a perfect session you're tuning in for. We are thrilled to be joined with our friends at Indeed Prime today to talk to you about how you can go from individual contributor to a team leader. A few logistics before I turn it over to Ingrid. We'll be sending out a follow-up email after today's webinar with the recording, so you can revisit it anytime via the email or by visiting our site. And we'll also be sending information on how you can stay connected with Indeed Prime as well. And so without further ado, I will turn it over to Ingrid, who is a career coach with Indeed Prime.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I am excited to be here to talk more about getting from that individual contributor level to a management role, when it makes sense, when it doesn't. So a little bit about me. So my name is Ingrid. Again, I'm a career coach with Indeed Prime. I've been a career coach here for about 3 years now, helping technical candidates find roles. I previously worked in recruiting for the last 3 or 4 years, where I was able to assist candidates find their next role. Prior to that, my background is actually in gender and women's studies. So I have a specific interest in helping women get to that next level. So if you do have any questions throughout the course of this webinar, please let me know. I'm happy to assist in any way I can. So a little bit about Indeed Prime and where I'm coming from. So most of you have probably heard of Indeed. Indeed in general is for all jobs. So you can find anything from construction workers to nurses. Indeed Prime specifically is for technical candidates and companies looking to hire for technical roles. So it's basically a matching platform where you can basically connect with employers for roles that you could potentially be a good fit for. So once you apply to the platform, your profile is live and companies are able to find you and then reach out to you. You also get access to free one-on-one career coaching. So everything from your job search that has been puzzling to you, if it's a resume review process, if it's interview preparation, negotiation, job search tactics. That's what myself and my colleagues are here to help you with. And again, it's a completely free service to you. So there's a lot of information on indeed.com/prime if you need to learn more, if you're on the job hunt actively looking right now, or just would like some help with career coaching. We're all here to help for that. Okay, so just to go over briefly an agenda for today. So knowing when to move to a management role, it's not always super obvious whether or not you are ready for that next level. There are a lot of things that go into it. And also going into the steps that it takes to get into that leadership role. So it's not a linear path that necessarily takes you from being an individual contributor to a management role. So there are certain steps you need to take to make the transition as seamless as humanly possible. And once you get to that management role, it's not only about surviving there, but thriving. So what are the things you need to do on a regular basis to make sure that you're cemented in that management role? And again, I will take your questions and answers throughout this and field them towards the end of this webinar. So feel free to keep them coming along. Okay, so the first step is actually deciding if management is right for you. So there are a couple of things you need to ask yourself. So just to kind of provide you some stats here first. So more than half of all new managers fail within their first 2 years of actually becoming a manager. So that's why it's critical to know what steps need to be taken for you to make it to that next level. Because it's not always super obvious. This transition is always very difficult because the expectations are not really clear for you from the beginning. So like I mentioned before, questions that you really need to ask yourself. This is what I do with candidates on a regular basis. It's really important to know what your motivations are. So oftentimes the first question I'll always ask a candidate is, why are you looking? What's important to you in your next role? So are you looking for a title change or a role change? So title specifically, it's a good resume builder. Are you looking to get to that next level just title wise? Are there certain aspects of the job that you find yourself bored in, or do you need extra motivation to continue being in your current role? Do you want a raise? Is money really important to you? Is that salary really important to you? Oftentimes that title change doesn't come with a raise. So oftentimes companies will have different titles for different roles, and that not necessarily means that it's going to be an advance in your career. It might just be a lateral move. Are you seeking work-life balance? So with great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility. So it's actually asking yourself, if work-life balance is important to you, management may not be the best option because you're significantly will spend a lot of time in meetings. You're spending a lot of time of your time outside of work. So if work-life balance is one of your priorities in your job search in general, management may not be the best fit for you. So, and are you also comfortable with challenging conversations? So a lot of times managers have to be not only structural managers, but also people managers as well. Are you comfortable having those difficult conversations with people that you are leading? Oftentimes in terms of who is reporting to you, their work ethic, all of these can potentially be really difficult conversations to have. So are you ready for that? So like I mentioned before, so a lot of the grunt work is taken away when you get into a management level position. So you're not necessarily in the weeds anymore. You're making high level decisions. So managers spend a great deal of their time in meetings. So it's not on the ground work. It's not getting into in-depth projects. It's really a lot of time kind of talking about high level stuff. So are you comfortable not being a part of the day-to-day anymore and really willing to spend most of your time discussing what the next steps are going to be? Okay, so again, talking about motivations. Do you want to help people? Again, managers are not strictly structural managers, but they're also people managers. Are you willing to be a leader in terms of that and provide mentorship? Also, are you looking up to pick up new skills? If you're an individual contributor, you have your skill set in place. You're used to coding, for example, for a lot of you, if you're software engineers, it's really a matter of making sure that your skills are really set on your resume right now. But are you looking to upskill in some way? Are you looking for those new agile potential skills that you're looking for? Are you looking for leadership opportunities that come along with that? And again, like I mentioned before, are you bored in your current role? Do you feel like you could utilize your skills towards becoming more of a leadership in a leadership capacity? So really considering what your motivation is at this point. Okay, so this next step is to actually define your value and promote yourself. So this is really where making a list of your accomplishments is extremely important. So a lot of you have probably done this when you go into a review of talking about what you've done the past quarter or the past year, depending on how often you're doing reviews at that point. So really highlighting your achievements. This is where having a database of all the accomplishments that you've had over the last quarter are extremely important because they serve as proof to your current manager or whoever you're going to be interviewing with that you're capable of making to that next level. role. So how do you impact your team? And how do you impact the business at large? What have you done? Can you prove it? Have you developed new skills? Have you taken the time outside of your current job and your current responsibilities to upskill in a certain fashion? Have you gone and taken online courses at Udacity, for example? Have you taken night classes? You really want to be able to prove that you've taken these steps towards getting into a manager level position and developing those new skills. And do people come to you for help? Do people see you as someone that they can come to with problems, not only related to their work, but some in a mentorship capacity as well? Are you the go-to person for solving problems? These are all things that you can use as leverage to get you to that manager level position and provide the backup for it. Okay, so now that you've defined what you've been doing over the last quarter, over the last year, it's time to actually quantify it. So first and foremost, identify the position or level that you want. So like I mentioned before, the title for certain roles changes from company to company. It's really a matter of finding out what exactly that title you want and how to get there. So there's a couple different things you can do here. So there are a ton of compensation websites out there where you can you can put in the title that you're seeking, and it'll give you a comprehensive analysis of ranges for the role that you are seeking. So Indeed.com/salaries is one of them. Glassdoor has a bunch of compensation info related to that as well. So basically you can just type in the title that you're looking for and get a really good representation of the compensation that's available for that specific role. So knowing your worth is extremely important part of the process, especially if you are going into negotiating for a higher level role or a higher salary. And make sure to provide the data attached to it too. You don't want to come in with just saying, you know, I deserve this amount of money. You really have to have your backup attached to it too, saying that these representative companies are related to the role that I'm applying for, and this is what I believe I'm worth. Also providing a range is extremely important. I know a lot of us want to keep our salary close to the vest and not reveal our cards too early. So really that is a detrimental part of the process. Recruiters, hiring managers need to know what you're looking to make for your specific role. So putting it back on a recruiter and making it their responsibility to give you that number is not always the best course of action. You want to come in really knowledgeable about what you're looking to make in your next role. Okay, so the next step is to actually meet with your manager and make your intentions known. So again, you really knowing that your manager is there to help you is extremely important. So again, not playing your cards close to the vest, indicating that you are looking for a higher level position and how they can get you there. Because they won't know unless you're looking for a position outside of the job. Really your first step in getting to a manager level position is seeking one with the company that you're in. It's the easiest way to start. It's the best way to get into a manager level position because you've already kind of proven yourself. So make sure to talk about your intentions early and often. So this is not a linear conversation. It's not a one-time deal where you're going to ask for a manager level role and they're just going to say, yes, absolutely, let's do this. This is going to be over the course of months occasionally. So make sure to share your progress along the lines of when you're doing what you're doing. So once you start that conversation, make sure to keep in touch with them, not too often, but make sure that you know that you're prepared for an ongoing conversation for potentially months. Okay, so what if you get to that point and your manager says, yeah, but not yet? What can you do in the meantime if there isn't an opportunity available to you? You really need to be able to build up your skill set. So like I mentioned before, finding courses to upskill. So there are a ton of resources out there for free or paid services that you can select to upskill for your next role. So it's really a matter of doing your research on companies and what the job description is requiring. So this is where you can make a comprehensive list of skills you need to get into that next role. So really knowing what the job description is asking for and find ways to get those skills. You can also seek to cross-collaborate collaborate with other organizations in your company. So this is really important part of the leadership component, because not only are you siloed in your current role, you want to be able to prove that you have the skills and the leadership ability to cross-collaborate with other teams. This is also a good opportunity to let other teams know that you are currently searching. So they'll be able to leverage that information. If you've made a good relationship with other teams, they know that you're on the job hunt, and they'll be able to identify when roles become available if it's not necessarily on your specific team. Make sure to join groups and meetup groups and groups on LinkedIn. So this is a really good opportunity to network with other managers and see how they got to where they are. Asking for informational interviews is an extremely important component of this as well. So make sure that you can cast a wide net in terms of your network and see how others have had similar career paths to you and how they've gotten to that manager level. Also asking for more responsibilities. If you found yourself kind of at a dead end, it's always a good idea to see what else is out there in terms of responsibilities. If there are always opportunities out there to take on more of a leadership role, or taking on more responsibilities to showcase, again, that you are willing to move to that next role. Also, finding a mentor is a great part of the process. That also kind of ties in with networking. Where you can either find other women in your organization that are in leadership roles that you could potentially take out for coffee and really pick their brain in terms of how they got to where they are. Okay, so the next step is actually the application process for applying for a manager role as an individual contributor. So it's a little bit different in terms of how to prepare. So know how to answer the question, have you managed before? So this may not apply to a lot of people. Maybe you haven't managed people in the past. It's a matter of manipulating what your skill set is and what you have been able to do, and finding a way to leverage that for the question if you've managed before in a behavioral interview. So you have to find ways where you've either managed a process, managed other people, and find a way to incorporate that into that specific question. So show your relevant experience as it relates to management. Make sure to brush up on your resume and reposition it for management. So there are certain keywords and phrases that are necessary for the roles you're applying for in a manager level position that need to be incorporated as part of your resume. So keyword terms like led, managed, worked on, was responsible for. All of these need to be incorporated as part of your resume in order to indicate that you've led a team or led a certain process. Those are keywords that recruiters are looking for, and that's what is going to be shown up in the ATS as well. So a little bit about applicant tracking software. If you're not familiar with ATS, 98% of companies use some sort of applicant tracking software in order to pull out all the relevant data from your resume and essentially rank you before you hit an actual recruiter. So this really is important for keyword searches that recruiters are conducting and the way that your resume is formatted. So just a little bit on formatting before we move on. Make sure you don't include any kind of funky formatting on your resume. And this especially applies to UX and UI designers. I know you really want to make your resume attractive and beautiful, but it is not friendly to ATS. You could essentially be rejected for a position solely on the fact that ATS is unable to read your resume. So save your beautifully formatted resumes for applying directly to hiring managers or giving it to a recruiter. But if you're organically applying to positions online, make sure you stay in standard linear formatting. And again, include those keywords. Everything that's on the job description should also be included on your resume. So like I mentioned before, resume formatting is extremely important. Make it simple. Don't get too creative with funky lines, columns, graphics. Any of that will garble applicant tracking software. And in terms of content, if your final exam is the resume, the answer key is the job description. So you really want to make sure that the requirements as part of the role are included in your resume. So those are going to be those keywords that appear when a recruiter conducts a keyword search on you. So just to reiterate, resume formatting, extremely important. Keep it simple. Don't use any kind of funky text. And make sure the content is appropriate to the roles that you're applying for. So in terms of keyword matching, so like I mentioned before, I used to be a former technical recruiter. So I'm coming at you with some information regarding how recruiters see keyword matching. So recruiters will receive hundreds, sometimes thousands of applications for a specific requisition or a specific role. Keyword matching helps them siphon down that information and siphon down the applicants to a manageable level. So that's why the keyword matching is important. So not only do you have to include it, you have to include it often, but it has to be organic. So let's say you're applying for a software developer role, and the title of the job is software engineer. So software developer, software engineer, kind of one and the same. It's either teal or blue-green. They kind of match together. They're more often than not the same thing. You want to make sure that your title on your resume is geared towards the title that is given on the job application, because that will serve as a keyword match. Also, like I mentioned, including as many times as you can that particular keyword or phrase. So if we're working for Python, for example, you want to be able to include Python in your summary section, in your technical skills, incorporate it into your environment, in your resume as well, because it, again, ATS will count how many times that you use that particular keyword phrase and rank you in order of how many times you use it. That's not to say that you want to hide some of your keywords or skills in white font, for example. I've seen this done a couple of times on resumes where candidates will try to game the system and include keywords in white font so it doesn't appear on their resume and it's not organically in there. That's going to be a huge red flag. Recruiters are going to know that right away, and you could leave a sour taste in their mouth. So make sure you're organically using these keyword searches. Okay. So do's and don'ts. Make sure to use the job titles on your resume. So again, it's software engineering versus a software developer. If the job description asks for a software developer, you want to be able to use that terminology. Make sure to tailor your resume to reflect what's written in the job description. I know this sounds extremely tedious and really annoying to have to modify your resume for every single role you're applying for, but that's really how you're going to make it pass applicant tracking software. And if a lot of you are spamming out your resume to apply for a million different positions and not hearing back, it's because the applicant tracking system for those specific roles is not making you a match. So make sure to include keywords that are specific to management skills. So budgeting, agile, project management, hiring, leadership, all of these are necessary keywords that need to be included in your resume if you're looking for that higher level role. Also the don'ts. Don't have generic phrasing or any of your soft skills in there. Soft skills can be spoke about in an interview scenario. It doesn't need to take up valuable real estate on your resume. And also, if you can't prove that you're a team player or that you have great communication skills, it doesn't really have a place on your resume. You really need to back up those statements with actionable things. So really identifying what you did and why you did it. So every bullet point in your resume should be a combination of those two things, what you did and why. So really incorporating those hard technical skills is important. And again, stuffing your resume with keywords in an effort to rank higher in the ATS, that's going to be extremely noticeable, not only to the recruiter, but the hiring manager, and they will reject your application right off the bat, or even keep a note in your file that this is something that you did and tried to game the system. And also, this is just a general rule of thumb in general to make sure that all the spelling is correct. You would be surprised about the amount of time I've seen scientist or data scientist spelled incorrectly. So get a second pair of eyes on your resume. It doesn't hurt to not only go through the spell check, but get another person, another human being to read your resume to make sure that all the content is correct and the spelling is there. Okay, so here's an example of how keyword matching actually works. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see an example for a senior engineer position. And you'll see on the right-hand side an example summary of what is included on a resume. So you can see how in the highlighted components there, we're including a lot of the keywords that are incorporated as part of the job description into the summary section. This again will help with the ATS system. So making sure that regulatory compliance is in there, talking about IT infrastructure. This is a great example on how to take the keywords in a job description and incorporate them into your summary section or even in your job descriptions. Okay, so what if you're still not confident that your resume is ATS friendly? So there are a couple of options you can select from. So JobScan is a great way where you can just upload your resume to the website and it'll tell you whether or not your resume is ATS friendly. And again, they'll use the formatting in addition to the content as well. For those of you outside the States, CV Scan is another option you can select from as well. Okay, so just to go over what we went over so far, so know why you want to be in a management role. So really identifying your primary motivations for entering a management level position and how they differ from being an individual contributor. Again, the stakes are really high, so you want to make sure that you're prepared. Be prepared for the responsibility of what comes along with that management level position. Again, not a lot of work-life balance, a lot of meetings, a lot of difficult conversations. Make sure that you're aware that that's part of the equation as well. Make sure to talk early and often to your manager and let them know what your intentions are early. And make sure to take part of your own career, especially if you get that no for now response from your manager. This is your opportunity to upskill in your current role and then potentially move to a different position at a different company. And also have a backup plan. If you're fine, staying in the role you're at for the next year, absolutely do that. But if it's time to move on, really research what other companies are looking for and what the job description entails as well. Okay, so that concludes our webinar for today. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, so keep them coming along, and it was a pleasure. And if you do have any questions, feel free to sign up for Indeed Prime and ask a career coach. We're always here to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ingrid. That was such a great presentation. I know I learned a lot, so I hope everyone else did too. If you have any questions, which we have a few, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Or if you want, you can also drop them into the chat. So one person wants to know, which skills should I learn as a new leader, and what kind of skills should you prioritize?
That's a great question. So I would prioritize agile methodologies specifically if you're coming from a technical background, but also really having difficult conversations and the leadership components that come along with that. So I would follow that up with, are you looking for more technical managerial role or something related more to a different field? So really knowing that is important, but I would really bone up on your leadership skills as well. Different companies offer several different courses that are related to effective leadership. So that's one of them. But if you're looking for a more technical position, going into an agile methodologies component is helpful as well.
Awesome. Also a question, where can I look for a mentor if I'm currently not working for a company?
That's a great question. So that's where networking really comes into play. So utilizing LinkedIn as a resource, reaching out to folks who are in companies that you really admire or want to be in, and then asking for informational interviews. So I know this kind of sounds weird because you don't know the actual person, but what you can do is, let's say you want to work at Google or you want to find a mentor at Google, going to their LinkedIn page and researching the employees that are there and finding someone who's kind of in a similar path to you or has previously worked in a similar role as you, and then reaching out to them asking if you can take them out for coffee, especially if they are local. It really doesn't hurt to ask, and oftentimes, mentors especially, or people in leadership positions, really look to mentor other people as well. So it's going to come across as really impactful from your perspective in terms of asking them right out the blue, but also asking, just asking how they got to where they are. So LinkedIn is an effective tool to use. I would also try and Meetup as well. So you can get hyper granular on Meetup in terms of finding Meetup groups that really reflect the roles that you are applying for or the field that you're in. Oftentimes there will be higher level leaders there as well looking to hire for their next role. But if you're specifically looking for mentors, networking is your best bet.
Yeah, such great advice. I totally agree. And I love that. Just ask. Most people will say yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you have any recommended courses for management from an entry level
From an entry level role to a manager level role?
Yeah, I'm thinking if you're at entry level and you're wanting to go into management.
So knowing your path is extremely important. So I wouldn't recommend, especially if you're an entry level role, trying to really jump or leapfrog over several different positions to get to that leadership role, just because you need to bone up on the experience first. So having those opportunities where you can effectively be a leader in a role is your best bet in terms of getting to a leadership role. Because oftentimes it will, especially for hiring managers, it'll be a little bit weird to them that you're looking for a leadership role when you haven't had relevant experience, or if you're just in that entry level role. So it's really important to gain that experience first, be able to indicate how you've had leadership experience in the roles that you are currently pursuing, and then get to that next level. So it's kind of a linear digression from being entry level to a management level role. You can't just leapfrog the process, unfortunately.
Great. This is a great question. One participant says, thanks so much, Ingrid. I'm a pretty young professional, but already know that I want to go into management. What are some things I can do to get people to ignore my age and take me seriously?
That's a great question. So it really is a matter about proving yourself. So if you're currently employed right now as a young professional, it's extremely important to build that experience, like I mentioned before. So really finding ways to leverage your current role and get into leadership positions. So is there a particular project that you can take the lead on? The age component, again, it's really, you want to be able to, age shouldn't be a factor in the equation. It's really a matter of your experience. So really showcasing how you've been a leader in your current role and what you're doing in your next. So I think that answers the question.
Great. There's some good questions coming in via the chat too. And I love this one because I think oftentimes people can think they want to be in management and then end up really not liking it. To your point about always being in meetings and all of that. So how can I be sure if I'm suitable for management?
That's great. It's asking yourself the difficult questions. So really knowing what it takes to be a leader. So really identifying whether or not you have the personality type for it. Are you an extrovert? Are you willing to, even if you are an introvert, are you willing to have those difficult conversations with people who are under you? Are you willing to, put yourself out there? And if you're not right now, there are things you can do in order to bone up on those skills. So really taking stock of your own personality traits and what's important to you is kind of first and foremost. So recognize that there are certain personality traits and certain personality types that are better suited for management level roles. So again, being a little bit more aggressive with how you handle specific situations. Are you able to think on the fly? So all these are kind of things you need to take stock of and recognize if these are strengths or weaknesses that you do have. So I would make a list of your own strengths and weaknesses first and foremost, and see how you can highlight your strengths to apply to leadership level roles.
Uh-oh. Ingrid, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, my screen froze for a second. Never good when you're doing a webinar. Yeah. So this is a great question too. So for resume machine readability, are there only particular formats that will be picked up? So for example, PDF versus Word.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would always use Word. ATS, some of them are not sophisticated enough to read PDF format. So I would default to Word every single time. And again, really make sure that you keep it simple. ATS cannot read lines, graphs, columns, funky formatting. So make your resume as boring as possible and stay in standard linear formatting with 1-inch margins all the way across. And again, if you ever have a doubt, always use Word formatting because most ATS can read Word.
Great. From your experience, do hiring managers find it valuable to see someone with a technical background like software development trying to get into a people project management role? Do these technical people have greater chances versus someone who may not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of leadership level roles expect you to be a jack of all trades. So not only do you have to have the technical background, but you have to have the people skills. And I think more often than not, hiring managers like to have a technical background because they can always teach you to be a leader. Those are teachable skills. Teaching on the job Python, for example, is not going to be as relevant as teaching on the job leadership skills. So it is important to focus on your technical background and know that leadership is teachable and management level skills are teachable as well. And again, the expectation comes that you do have a technical background and that you are willing to jump into a leadership position.
Great. Another great question. If you do fail at being a manager, how do you transition back into a lower level role?
Oh, that's a great question. So if you find yourself getting, I would assume that this is a moment where you have either gotten demoted or have been transitioned into a different role. Recovering from that is not always the easiest because that'll have to appear on your resume. So what I would recommend doing is trying to get back into a position where you can flex your muscles a little bit more and make it to that manager level position. If you failed, it's more often than not because you weren't ready for it. So boning up on your skills, boning up on your leadership abilities over the course of when you've either been demoted or have essentially failed in your manager level position, so you can get back up to that level. It's not going to be detrimental that you've reached through the stars and came up short. What's more important is learning from the experience and what you can do better in the future.
Great. So one person asks or says, I'm coming out of a career gap after a period of redundancy. I originally supervised and coached a small offshore team and guided them, but want to now progress from leadership to management. What would be the best way to demonstrate that my skills are still suitable for role progression despite the gap? And the gap's about 2 years.
Okay, so a 2-year gap. Normally, I wouldn't say that there's an issue with a 1-year gap. However, with 2, you kind of have to explain yourself. So when it comes to getting into that initial round of recruiter screening or to a hiring manager level, they're going to ask you what you did for the last 2 years. And you have to not only show what you've actually been doing. I don't know what that gap has been in terms of, but you want to be first off honest about what that gap was and what you were doing in the meantime to upskill. So it's one thing that you've had those specific skills in the past, but have you been working on it in the interim? Because you do need to show that progression of what you've been doing over the last 2 years to indicate that you are still willing to continue on with that particular path. So let's say that these last 2 years, you haven't really done much of upskilling. What I would recommend doing is getting into a role where you can work up to a manager level position, either hearkening back to more of your individual contributor roles and then working up within the system and within the company, because that's your best bet.
Great. So we only have one more question. So if you have anything else you want to know, please ask it now. Like I said, you can either use the Q&A function or the chat. So one person would like to know, how do you get over the initial fear of going into management from after being an individual contributor?
That's a great question. So I think mentorship is an extremely important part of the process because you need to have someone where you can bounce ideas off of and someone who can support you throughout the process. So getting that mentor and someone who you can rely on to give you guidance along the way, because it doesn't really happen in a vacuum. Managers get to their level because they've made solid connections with others and recognize that they are good fits for manager level roles. So making sure that you have a really good support system to encourage you along the way and make sure that you can bounce ideas off of again. That's what I would recommend doing, is making sure you have a good support network in place first. And if you don't, there are ways to find them. Again, going to meetups, finding someone who will be able to guide you through the process and kind of quell your anxiety about going to a manager level role.
Great. Well, that is everything that people have submitted. Thank you so much, Ingrid, for your time and giving us this awesome presentation. We'll be sending everyone the recording so you can revisit all this information later, as well as how you can stay connected with both Indeed Prime and Fairygodboss. So thanks, Ingrid.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Great.
Take care, everyone.
Have a great day. Bye,
You
everyone.
too.